There are moments in life when you've given everything, your time, your heart, your vulnerability, and it feels like it went unnoticed, unvalued, and unreturned. You kept showing up. You kept texting first. You kept wondering, hoping, praying that maybe today would be the day he misses you back, but it never came. Not until you stopped missing him. Because something shifts the moment you pull your energy back. When you stop showing up in his inbox, when your name isn't the first one that lights up his phone anymore, when your affection is no longer a given, that's when it hits him. He didn't feel your presence because he was too comfortable in it. He thought you'd always be there, always loving, always waiting, always reaching. But the moment you stopped missing him, that's when he started missing. You see, we often believe that the more we pour into someone, the more they'll love us. But that's not how value works in the heart of a man who hasn't done the inner work to recognize worth. Sometimes your constant availability clouds their clarity. When someone knows you're emotionally attached to them, they stop questioning whether or not they need to earn your attention. Your presence becomes routine, expected, and routine rarely invites reflection. But your absence, that invites memory, that invites silence, that invites late nights staring at the ceiling, wondering where your energy went, wondering why you stopped caring, wondering if maybe, just maybe, you meant more than he was ready to admit. That's what happens when a woman stops missing a man who took her love for granted. Because let me tell you something, a woman's emotional presence is powerful. It's nurturing, it's comforting, it's healing. But when it's unreciprocated for too long, it becomes exhausting. When you keep showing up for someone who won't even turn around to notice your effort, you begin to lose pieces of yourself. And that's not love, that's emotional depletion. So when you decide to stop missing him, not because you hate him, not because you're bitter, but because you've finally chosen to return that love to yourself, something powerful happens. He starts to see you differently. He starts to remember the way you made him feel safe, seen, important. He starts to realize how easy he had it when your attention was free, and he begins to feel that void. That's when the what ifs hit. What if I had tried harder? What if I had shown her I cared? What if I hadn't taken her for granted? But by then, you've already moved forward. By then, you're no longer looking backward. You're no longer waiting to be chosen because you chose yourself. And if he's lucky, he'll miss you in silence. But by then, you'll be at peace in your presence, whole, healed, unavailable. Sometimes the most unforgettable love is the one that walks away quietly and never looks back. That's what he finally realizes. He didn't miss you until you stopped missing him. Let that be the moment you never forget. We live in a world where people often don't value presence until it turns into absence, and this is especially true when it comes to relationships. Key point 2 is powerful. When you stop missing him, you stop chasing validation from someone who never truly saw your worth in the first place. And let me tell you, there's something sacred about reaching that moment when you no longer check your phone, hoping his name pops up. When you stop replaying old conversations, trying to find the part where you could have said something different, something better. That's the moment your spirit starts healing. Because when a woman stops missing a man, she's not just letting go of a person, she's letting go of a pattern of waiting, a pattern of overgiving, a pattern of hoping for reciprocity that never came. She stops looking for crumbs of attention and starts demanding a feast of respect, loyalty, and love from herself first. You see, when you stop missing someone who didn't value you, you start remembering who you were before the disappointment. And that's when everything begins to change. You start pouring that same energy, that same care, that same thoughtfulness into your own life, into your peace, into your goals, into your healing, into the version of you that was always worthy, but maybe forgot for a while, maybe because you were too busy missing someone who never deserved the depth of your presence. And the crazy thing, that's when he notices. That's when he starts wondering, not just where you went physically, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically. Your energy no longer reaches out to him in the unseen, and that silence is loud because your absence becomes a mirror that reflects all the ways he failed to love you, to show up, to appreciate what he had. And in that silence, a man is forced to sit with himself, forced to reckon with the truth that the woman who once longed for him no longer does. But let me be clear. This isn't about punishing him. It's not about playing games. It's not about becoming cold or bitter. It's about shifting your focus from him to you. It's about reclaiming your emotional energy. When you stop missing him, you stop shrinking yourself to be lovable in his eyes. You start standing tall in your own. And when you begin to do that, your power returns. You become magnetic, not because you're chasing anyone, but because you're attracting everything aligned with your healed spirit. That is the silent revolution. That is the shift that changes everything. Because when you stop missing someone who took your love for granted, you're not just letting go of them, you're choosing to stop betraying yourself. You're telling your heart, we don't settle anymore. We don't chase silence. We don't wait for someone to remember us. We remember ourselves. And that's when the real healing begins. There comes a point in your journey when you begin to realize that your energy has value, that your time, your presence, your love, it's not free. And this is where key point 3 becomes deeply important. A man only begins to truly feel your absence when your energy no longer serves him. See, as long as you're available, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, he feels no need to change. No reason to reflect, no urgency to show up better. Why? Because he still has access to you, to your softness, to your support, to the way you held him up even when he didn't offer you the same in return. And let me be clear, this doesn't make him evil or heartless. It makes him comfortable. And sometimes comfort is the enemy of growth. When you're always the one initiating, always the one forgiving first, always the one sending the just checking on you messages, you're teaching him something dangerous. You're teaching him that you'll be there no matter what. And that's not loyalty. That's self-abandonment dressed up in love. Now, here's where the shift happens. The moment you begin to take your energy back, everything changes. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop overextending yourself, when you stop trying to make him see your value, and instead you return that energy inward, that's when the dynamic changes. And not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're no longer willing to be easy to misuse. It's not your job to keep reminding someone how to treat you. It's your responsibility to stop allowing patterns that hurt your spirit. And when you withdraw your energy, not in spite, but in self-respect, he begins to notice. He begins to feel the absence, not just of your physical presence, but of your emotional availability. The way you used to respond quickly, the way you used to check in, the way you used to care deeply for his well-being, even when your own heart was breaking. You see, when that energy is gone, it leaves a silence that speaks volumes. He might not admit it, he might not call, but trust me, he notices, because energy doesn't lie. And your energy, when it's rooted in love, is powerful, it's nurturing, it's healing. So when you take it away, it creates a vacuum, a space where he's forced to confront what he took for granted. He starts to miss not just you, but the version of himself that felt grounded in your presence. And that can shake him. But this is where you rise. This is where your healing deepens, because you finally understand that your energy is sacred. You don't pour into people who only take. You don't beg to be understood. You don't offer your heart to someone who only ever took shelter in it without ever intending to stay. So instead of chasing, you choose to protect your peace. Instead of texting, you choose to nurture your soul. Instead of waiting, you start building. Rebuilding your confidence, rebuilding your boundaries, rebuilding the version of you that knows you were never too much. You were just too available for someone who didn't know what to do with your gift. And in that space, you begin to glow different. You speak different. You walk different, because you're no longer trying to prove your worth. You're living it. And that's when the world, and yes, even he, starts to see what they missed. But by then, you're too focused on your future to look back at what didn't value you when it mattered. That's the beauty of protecting your energy. It shifts everything. There's something powerful that happens when a woman finally stops checking her phone, hoping to see his name. When she finally logs off from constantly rereading old messages, wondering what she could have done differently. When she finally realizes that silence isn't rejection, it's a redirection to herself. And that's where this next truth lands. His silence only started hurting when yours finally got louder. When your absence became more powerful than your presence. See, there's a time when your silence is seen as weakness. When you don't respond, and he assumes it's because you're hurt, not healed. When you don't chase, and he thinks it's because you're waiting for him to return. But something shifts the moment your silence becomes intentional. Not a reaction, but a choice. Not passive, but powerful. That's when everything changes. You stop asking, why did he leave, and start asking, why did I stay so long? You stop hoping for the apology and start giving yourself the closure, because the truth is, we think silence from a man is abandonment, but sometimes it's protection. God will let someone disappear to save you from what you don't yet see. And when he goes quiet, it's often not to punish you, but to reveal him. Pay close attention to what people do when they think you'll wait forever, when they think they can disappear and return without explanation, when they assume your heart is a revolving door. That kind of silence speaks loudly. It says, I'm not ready to love you the way you deserve. And that's not something you need to chase. That's something you need to hear with your soul, not your ears. But here's where the deeper healing begins. Your silence, it becomes a mirror. It reflects back everything he overlooked. The grace, the consistency, the softness, the loyalty, all those quiet things you did that weren't loud enough to be noticed in the moment. But once gone, they echo loudly. You don't have to make noise to be missed. Sometimes it's the silence that lingers the longest. It's in the spaces where your voice used to speak life. It's in the spaces where your voice used to speak life. It's in the moments where your laughter used to bring peace. When those things vanish, it becomes very, very loud in the heart of the one who never thought he'd lose it. And no, silence isn't about making someone suffer. It's about reclaiming your power. You're not ignoring him, you're honoring you. You're not playing games, you're choosing growth. Because silence allows you to listen deeper, not to his words, but to your soul. And your soul is trying to tell you. He only misses you when he realizes your absence isn't temporary. When he finally understands that your silence means you're healing, not hoping, moving on, not holding on. So, don't be afraid to get quiet. That's where your power is. Because when you stop explaining yourself, stop begging to be seen, stop hoping to be chosen, that's when you start choosing you. And the moment you do, your silence becomes the most powerful thing he's ever heard. There is something that happens deep within a woman when she stops trying to prove her worth to someone who never truly saw it. That moment when she no longer feels the need to remind him of everything she did, the sacrifices, the support, the loyalty. That moment is sacred because it means she has finally shifted her energy inward, and that shift is the beginning of her freedom. See, it's easy to try to get someone to remember you, to remind them of how much you cared, how much you were there, how many times you forgave. It's easy to stay stuck in that cycle of explaining yourself, hoping that somehow, if you say it right, if you show it enough, they'll finally see what they took for granted. But here's the truth. The moment you stop needing them to remember you is the moment they start feeling the weight of your absence. Not because you disappeared, but because you detached. That detachment isn't bitterness, it's clarity. It's the realization that you were always enough, but you were pouring your enough into someone who wasn't even holding a cup. And when you stop pouring, the emptiness hits them. That's when they start to notice. That's when he begins to remember. But by then, it's not because you're trying to make him. It's because the space you once filled can no longer be ignored. Let me tell you something powerful. The version of you that begged for his attention, that chased his validation, that waited for a text that never came, that version of you was still worthy. Even in her weakness, she was strong. But the version of you now, the one who has nothing to prove, who doesn't need to be remembered because she finally remembered herself, that version of you is unstoppable. You see, when a woman stops needing a man to remember her, she's no longer trying to reopen a door God already closed. She's no longer rehearsing the same pain, hoping it'll bring a different result. She's walking in a new direction, one that's built on peace, not performance, on purpose, not pain. You might remember your smile, your kindness, your loyalty, but it won't matter the same anymore because you won't be waiting for him to. You won't be sitting around hoping he finally realizes what he lost. And that's when it hurts the most, for him, not because you did anything wrong, but because you stopped trying to be unforgettable in his eyes and you started becoming undeniable in your own. You are not here to be remembered. You are here to be respected, loved, protected. And if someone has to lose you to realize your value, let them. Let them sit with the silence. Let them feel the echo of the love they mishandled. You don't have to remind them. Life will, time will, God will. And when that day comes, you won't even need to say, I told you so, because your peace will say it for you. When you finally stop answering his messages, when you stop checking his stories, when you stop reacting to his silence with desperate energy, that's when everything shifts. Because a woman's silence, when it's rooted in healing, carries more power than 1,000 words ever could. He might not have noticed the texts you sent at midnight, the calls you made when you were worried, the way you always showed up first. But he will notice the silence when it replaces all that noise. Trust me, he will. There is a difference between absence and presence. You were present in ways he didn't even understand. You were consistent when he was distant. You were patient when he was careless. You were loving when he didn't reciprocate. So now, when that energy is gone, he'll start feeling the weight of his decisions, the weight of all the I'll reply later and the I was busy, because now you're not waiting anymore. You stop chasing and suddenly he's confused. Suddenly he's watching your stories. He's asking mutual friends how you've been. He's scrolling back through old pictures. He doesn't miss you because you're gone. He misses you because he knows you finally let go. You didn't leave because you wanted attention. You left because you realized your worth couldn't survive in a place where it was constantly being overlooked. That realization is a powerful one. It's when your heart and your mind finally agree that enough is enough. You no longer need him to text you back. You don't need the apology that never came. You don't need to be picked by someone who made you feel like an option. Because now your energy is protected. Now your peace is sacred. Now your love is being redirected toward the one person who truly deserves it, you. And here's what's wild. The second he realizes you're not waiting anymore, he starts waiting on you. Waiting to see if you'll reach out. Waiting to see if he still holds space in your heart. But what he doesn't know is that you've already redecorated that space. You've already built a new life where he's no longer the center. And that's what haunts him. Not your presence, but your absence. Not the memories, but the fact that you're no longer tied to them. Because when a woman chooses her peace over a person who couldn't appreciate her, there's no going back. She glows differently. She moves with quiet confidence. She loves herself without apology, and that is something no man forgets, no matter how hard he tries. You didn't just stop missing him, you stopped needing him, and that's when he started missing you the most. You know what really wakes a man up? When the woman he thought would always be there isn't. Not in anger, not in revenge, not with bitterness, just in peace. That kind of quiet exit echoes, it lingers. It follows him into his thoughts, into his sleep, into his everyday routine. Because he never imagined a day when you wouldn't care anymore. He thought you'd keep waiting, keep calling, keep trying. But the thing he never saw coming was your growth, your healing. See, when you stop missing someone who took you for granted, it's not just about distance. It's a shift in energy. It's a change in how you view yourself. He starts to notice that you changed, but he can't quite put his finger on it. You're smiling without him, laughing harder, posting less, but glowing more. You're unreachable not because you're playing games, but because you've stopped being available to someone who never saw your worth until you went silent. And now he feels it deeply. Because for the first time, your energy isn't tied to his presence. He used to be able to predict you. He knew your patterns, how you'd text after a few days, how you'd eventually fold, how you'd show up with love even when he brought confusion. But now, you're unpredictable, mysterious, and more than that, you're emotionally unavailable to the games he used to play. What most people don't understand is that silence is a language, and yours is screaming now, not because you want attention, but because you've reclaimed your voice by using your absence. You didn't need to announce your exit. You didn't slam the door. You simply outgrew the version of you who kept accepting crumbs. You walked away from the table where love was served cold. Now he's dealing with the consequences of a woman who finally chose herself. And that, my friend, is unforgettable. Not because you did anything dramatic, but because you stopped doing everything you once did. He didn't lose you the day you walked away. He lost you the day he made you feel like leaving was your only option. And what hurts him the most? He can't fix it with a simple text. He can't rewind to the days when you were still open. Because while he was being inconsistent, you were evolving. While he was being distant, you were building strength. And now, the woman he once ignored has become the woman he can't forget. That's what makes your silence loud. That's what makes your growth powerful. You didn't just stop missing him. You started loving yourself so much that his absence stopped mattering. And now he's the one looking back, wondering how he lost the very thing he thought would never leave. There's a strange moment in every man's life when he realizes she's really not coming back. Not in pieces, not in glimpses, not in late night texts or I miss you calls. She's just gone. And it doesn't hit him all at once. No, it creeps in quietly, like when he sees her smile in a picture and knows it's not for him anymore. Like when he checks her story and realizes she hasn't thought about including him in weeks. It's when her silence doesn't sound like punishment, but peace. That's when it sinks in. He starts to remember the little things. The way she used to send long texts when he barely replied. How she remembered the smallest details he mentioned in passing. The way she always tried to understand his moods, even when he gave her mixed signals. Back then, he thought her love was endless, that no matter what, she'd always be right there, waiting, holding on, hoping. But now he sees a woman who stopped reaching, who stopped expecting, who stopped allowing him to keep her in emotional limbo. And he begins to regret not just the loss of the relationship, but the way he handled someone who only ever wanted to love him. He regrets every "I'm busy" text that was a lie. Every time he made her feel like too much when she was just giving her heart. He regrets the way he thought being distant would keep her hooked, that she'd keep chasing, that he'd always have the power. What he never realized is that love doesn't beg forever. A strong woman will try. She will give chance after chance. But the moment she feels like she's losing herself in trying to hold on to someone who doesn't hold her back, she will choose herself. And when that moment comes, it's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's not messy, it's clean, it's calm, it's final. He didn't miss her until the silence turned to peace, until the chaos he brought no longer lived in her mind, until he saw her walking in confidence, not looking back, because now he's the one checking his phone. He's the one wondering what could have been. He's the one replaying memories like a song that used to make sense, but now just hurts. That's the twist he never saw coming. He thought she'd stay in the story forever, but now she's just a closed chapter, one that taught her how to love better, but also how to walk away stronger. And him? He's left with the weight of what he lost, not because she changed, but because he never did. And the lesson is simple. Never assume someone will wait forever while you stay unsure. Because when she stops missing you, you'll start feeling everything she felt, and by then, she'll be too far gone to come back. There's a moment in every man's story where he starts searching for what he once took for granted. It usually comes late, when the distractions have quieted, when the excitement of attention fades, when reality sinks in. That's when it hits him. The woman who used to be all in is no longer available, emotionally or spiritually. He didn't lose her in a fight. He didn't lose her because she yelled or begged or made a scene. He lost her the moment she stopped trying, the moment she started showing up for herself more than she showed up for him. And here's the part that stings the most. He realizes she didn't leave to make him jealous. She didn't leave with bitterness in her heart. She left with peace. She left because she finally saw her own worth. She left because she got tired of reminding someone why she mattered. And that kind of leaving, it's not loud, but it's powerful. It echoes through his life in quiet ways. Every morning he wakes up and doesn't see her name on his phone. Every night he goes to sleep knowing she's no longer wondering about him. That's where it cuts deep. At first, he may have mistaken her silence for weakness. He thought she was being passive. But silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's power. It's the final act of self-respect. A woman who chooses silence over arguments has chosen herself. She no longer wants to win him back. She wants to win herself back. And now, he remembers the consistency she brought, the comfort of knowing someone was in his corner. He starts to reflect on how rare that kind of presence really is. And in a world full of temporary thrills, he starts to crave what she gave so freely: loyalty, depth, and genuine connection. But the truth is, once a woman evolves beyond your reach, it's no longer about missing her. It's about knowing you can't reach her where she's gone. She's no longer that version of herself who begged to be seen. She's become the version who no longer explains her worth. She just lives it. And that's what brings the regret. Not just that she left, but that he was blind to her value while he had it. Now, he's on the outside looking in, watching a woman he once knew become someone who's no longer accessible to him. Not because she's being cold, but because she's finally warmed toward herself. The man who once had her undivided attention now watches her shine alone, and he knows deep down her silence wasn't the absence of love. It was the beginning of self-love. And by the time he realized what she meant, she was already walking in the direction of everything she deserved. When a woman stops missing you, it's not because she's forgotten you or because she's chosen someone else over you. It's because she's finally understood her own value and she no longer feels the need to seek validation from you. She's been there, tried that, and exhausted herself in the process. She gave you chances, she made efforts, and she sacrificed her peace for the hope that things would change. But somewhere along the way, she realized the most important relationship she could invest in was the one she had with herself. And that's when she stopped missing you. She understood that her happiness couldn't be tied to your actions, your words, or your decisions. She began to see that for too long she had given pieces of herself to someone who didn't appreciate them. The love she had for you was pure, but she learned that love needs to be reciprocated. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to step away from someone who doesn't recognize your worth. The moment she stopped missing you was the moment she chose to stop giving more than she was receiving, and it was in that moment that her power was restored. Because let's be real, when you stop missing someone, it's because you've moved on. You've started realizing that your world doesn't revolve around them anymore. You've become your own source of strength, happiness, and stability. It's not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about becoming whole again. It's about finding your own rhythm and realizing you can live without someone who once felt indispensable. It's a deep, quiet liberation. You no longer yearn for someone who isn't yearning for you. You've begun to see the beauty in your own journey. For too long, she allowed herself to be emotionally dependent, hoping that by showing up, by caring, by being available, she would create a space where he would realize her value. But in truth, what she didn't know was that her value was never meant to be proved through others. It was meant to be discovered within herself. And when she did that, the urge to miss you, the need to constantly think about you, faded into the background of her life. She became too busy embracing the life she was creating for herself. She saw that her life had more potential than it did when it was tied to someone else's approval. And you know what? That's the most empowering thing any woman can do. Stop missing someone who wasn't ready to value her. She stopped missing you because she was no longer depending on you for fulfillment. She learned that her worth wasn't defined by whether or not you missed her. It was defined by the way she treated herself, by the way she built her own happiness, and by the way she decided that her peace wasn't negotiable. And when she made that decision, she gave herself a gift that no one could take away: self-sufficiency. In the end, it's a beautiful shift. The moment a woman stops missing you, it's a reflection of her growth. It's the point where she realizes she's no longer looking back because she knows where she's headed. And the truth is, if you were ever going to get her back, it would have to be when she's standing strong in her own life, when she no longer needs you to complete her, but rather when you see that you could add value to the fullness she's already created. That's when the real change happens, not in her missing you, but in her finding herself without you. And that's when you'll realize that it wasn't the distance that made her strong, it was her journey of not needing you to feel whole that made her the most powerful version of herself. And this realization isn't about regret. It's about understanding that sometimes people grow apart not because they don't care, but because they realize that their lives will be better when they focus on themselves. So if you ever get the chance to reflect, know that when she stopped missing you, she wasn't running away from you, she was running toward her own future. A future where her own worth is the foundation, not someone else's acknowledgement of it.